Hello Instagrammers and YouTubers alike, and this is Michael welcoming you to Retro Direction, my YouTube channel for reviews of retro video games, in particular Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn. And thanks for tuning in. Well, as you know, up until now I've reviewed only PlayStation games, so I thought I'd have a bit of variety here and offer you a bit of variety. Today it's going to be the turn of the Sega Saturn. And you know what? What better game to show it off than the amazing Virtua Fighter 2? So without further ado, with Virtua Fighter 2, we're going to have a look at why this game is so amazing, even to this very day. Now, first things first. When you convert an arcade game to the home, for the home gamer, you've got to add a few things to sort of increase longevity and make it more appetizing. Now, Virtua Fighter 2 has a few interesting additions. Watch mode. Yeah, you select two of your favourite fighters and watch them, kick the hell out of each other. Team battle mode, you can invite a few friends round and you each select a team of 8 characters and there you go. Battle Royale. Ranking mode does what it says on the tin. Expert mode is the most interesting of them all. Now, when you fight against expert mode, yes, it's considerably harder, but the interesting thing is that the computer uses your best moves against you. So if you keep using the same combination, throw, whatever, the computer kind of says right back at you, and it uses them on you. And it does work. I've tried it, and other players have tried it. It really does genuinely work. Versus mode is the 2-player. And there you go. Now, before going into the game, I'm going to talk about the option screen. Now, don't switch off just yet. Believe me, it's not going to take long, but it's worth a mention. Now, first of all, the option screen is very generous, very extensive, and you can adjust a hell of a lot of parameters, including how big your health bar is. You can have it even to take no damage at all, or you can have it small. Anyway, round, yeah, okay. Key assign, I use type B because I assign the throw button to the X button on the Sega Saturn control pad, the 6-button pad. And, of course, the other buttons as well. It's much easier, I think. And when you first load the game up, you get another option screen. Now, here's where things get interesting. Now, I won't go too deeply into this because we will be here ages. And I don't want to spend time on an option screen. But 2.0 was the original version of Virtua Fighter 2 released into the arcades, 96, I believe, 97. And it was like the base model. But they refined it with version 2.1 also included. Now, there are a few little additions. One of them is, for example, in 2.0, if you did punch kick, you could knock your opponent down. In 2.1, you would only stagger them, which I think is a little bit more realistic. Now, when you complete the game for the first time and you come into the option screen, you've got option screen 3, where you select what stage you want to fight on and how big or small you want your actual stage to be. And another couple of things. But anyway, let's go into the actual game itself and see what makes it so amazing, even to this very day. Yeah, I do sound very enthusiastic, don't I? But every time I put this game on, it just takes me right back to the music in this character select screen, to the actual background music in the game, to everything. Now, for the purposes of the review, we're going to use Kage. I like using him. I used to like ninjas as a child. Right, let's see. Well, what have we got?
Ready, go!
Now, first of all, let me just pause it. When you first load the game up at home, first of all, the first thing that strikes you is how incredible it looks. Now, I've got it running on my Sony Bravia here, and it does convey pretty much how it looks on a CRT, which was all that was available back in those days. And Virtua Fighter 2 runs in the Saturn's highest resolution possible, so it looks breathtaking. In fact, still to this very day, when you see it running, you still can't believe what you're seeing. It's that good. The detail on the characters is also quite amazing. I mean, look at Lau, for example, his logo on the front of his tunic and on the back. It looks really good. He's got 2 different logos, and it's very detailed. So the texture mapping is exceptional. Now those things flying around, I think they're leaves. Some people say they're birds. I think they're leaves. You never know. But anyway, so resolution, amazing. The game runs exactly at the same speed as the arcade. It's 60 frames per second, which is twice the speed of the original, which clocked in at around 30. You also have twice as many moves. Well, more than twice actually, because Virtua Fighter 1 had around 700 moves, maybe just a little more. Virtua Fighter 2 has well over 2,000 moves, and that doesn't just go for things like punches and kicks and throws. It's reflected in things like stagger moves, and when you're tripped up, the way your character animates. It's that kind of thing as well. And it's really quite amazing. Anyway, this is how well it moves. Here you go. That's one of my little put together moves, that one. But more on that later. Sound, pretty much the same as the arcade. I like to choose the remixed music compared to the arcade music because it just sounds a little bit better. The sound, when it comes to the character voices and, you know, when punches and kicks connect, sounds a bit tinnier on the Saturn compared to the arcade, but it's a very minor oversight, I think. Now next we're going to touch on other little additions compared to the first Virtua Fighter. Now here, I'm going to pause it again. Now you've got throw evasions. That's something that's been added. Okay, now every single character can escape a throw. So for example, if I instigate a throw on Sarah, if she times it correctly, she can escape my throw. And that leaves me open to a few hits if she's quick enough, and vice versa. If I input the throw input at just the right time when Sarah's about to throw me, I can escape the throw, and she's left vulnerable to 2 or 3 moves. And if you get in there quick enough, you can really do some serious damage. And there you have it. No, don't worry, that's not the end of the review. There's quite a bit more to actually cover, but it's just the addition. Now, as you know, some characters can counter moves and they can turn them back on you. In particular, Pai Chan, she can counter punches and kicks. Kage can counter punches. I think Sarah's not too bad. Then you've got Wolf. He's got a pretty interesting counter. Now, first of all, yes, this is the big thing here. I remember when this was first announced and then previewed and ultimately reviewed, fans were writing into the many magazines that I used to buy. I used to buy them all, believe me. And the main question was, how close is it a conversion to the arcade? Well, the answer is not bad at all, really. There are a few compromises, but that's to be expected. I mean, if you think about it, the arcade machine was worth, you know, quite a few thousands of pounds. And basically, you've got the arcade at home, pretty much. Now, there are a few compromises, and we'll touch on those shortly. One of them being light sourcing. Now, the game doesn't have a great amount of light sourcing, but it's got light trickery. As you can see here, even if I paused it, the lightning is still flashing, and the characters are very briefly lit up for like a split second. But because they're fighting at night time in this stage, the characters are shaded accordingly. So they look a bit darker. So it's not bad. I mean, if you watch two fighters fight in real life, the last thing you're going to look at is, what's the light sourcing like? So there you go. This is just fine with me. Now, the other main compromise we'll talk about when we go into the next stage. The next stage should be Shundi, the fighter that uses drunken kung fu.
Fight! 1. Ready, go!
Now, first of all, talking about drunken kung fu. Now, each character has his or her own fighting style, and they adopt real martial arts techniques. So they've got data from proper martial arts techniques, and they've transferred them to the characters. So they're not generic fighting moves common to all characters, like in Tekken, for example, or a few other fighting games, but they are completely different. Shun-Di uses drunken kung fu. Kage on the left uses ninjutsu and jujitsu, a combination of evasive techniques and throws and various grapples and, lightning fast punches and kicks. Shun-Di is more unpredictable. He can really kick your ass while he's drunk, and occasionally between moves he takes swigs from his bottle, and it's really, really good. So that's a very interesting thing about this game, is that there are genuine fighting techniques, different fighting styles belonging to different martial arts, and they're genuine. Every character is completely different. So when you master a character, you truly master him or her. And it's going to take you years to master them all. And it's just that good a game. And the depth is really unrivaled. Now, first of all, talking about differences. Now, one of the main differences is the detail in the backgrounds. Now, everyone was writing in particular mentioning the this level. Now, Shun-Di fights on a raft that floats downriver, and he passes beneath several bridges in the arcade version. And that's what fans really wanted to see, how good it was and if it was going to be the same as the arcade. But unfortunately, it wasn't. But, it's nothing to be sniffed at, sorry. The game still looks amazing. I mean, look at this. Who cares about a few bridges? Now, while the developers were hard at work trying to convert this to the home machines, they informed us that the only way that this game would run at 60 frames a second and in the highest resolution possible was if certain compromises were made. And because of that, only two things in this game could be 3D. The fighters themselves and the ring. The backgrounds had to suffer in order to keep up the speed. And really, that's just fine by me. I know the eagle-eyed among us would think, no, I don't like them really, it's a shame about backgrounds, but if you think about it, the way they've got them to run is actually quite amazing. And that we'll touch on in the next stage after this one. So let's try and destroy Pi as quickly as we can. Oh, talking about details, if you notice, I hit her, she hit me, I knocked off her headband, she knocked my mask off. So it's really good. Go away. So as you can see, the ring looks like it's floating independently of the actual background itself. It's particularly evident in this stage. But we're going to show you exactly what the developers did and how they did it, and how it looks really good. And they have to be admired for it. Right, let's go to the next stage. Now, the next fighter I'm going to be up against is Leon. Now, he's the young fellow that practices praying mantis kung fu. Now, while I fight, you viewers at home observe the backgrounds. You see the background of the hills and the Great Wall of China is scrolling independently of the layer that's in the foreground. Yes, of course. Now, the backgrounds consist of several different layers of parallax that scroll and zoom and scale, depending on where the fighters are and where the camera is. And that simulates depth, and it does it very well. The zooming is very impressive, and that's thanks to the Saturn's 2D capabilities. At the time when this came out, the PlayStation couldn't do such trickery. So, when you think back to Tekken 2, the backdrops are just photographs, and they're static, and they don't zoom or scale. Now, the other slight difference is that there is a very small selection of obscure reversal techniques that was omitted from the home conversion, but they're so obscure that I don't even know which they are. All the years that I've played this game and played the arcade version, I couldn't tell you which moves were dropped. But they were very, very obscure and very, very few. Other than that, the conversion is uncanny. It's brilliant. We've got one of the best fighting games ever on the home screen here. The music's brilliant. The action is superb. Everything's super smooth without a hint of slowdown. So there you have it. Now, the other very interesting thing is that each fighter has a throw evasion technique. I don't know if you'll catch glimpses of it here. Yes, you have. Jeffrey tried to throw me, and I escaped his throw. Every character can do that. And a few characters can counter and reverse punches and kicks on you, like Pi, Kage. I've done it again, look. Oh, he's got me again. Sod. Now, this game did really pose quite a problem for the developers. I mean, when they released early clips of it running, I mean, if you look on YouTube, there's somebody very kindly put a video up of the videotape that came with one of the magazines, which I had. I've still got it somewhere, but I don't bother getting it out and playing it on the video player. I just go onto YouTube. But it showed a preview of all the forthcoming games, and interestingly, you see a very early version of Virtua Fighter 2, which was previewed at one of the many game shows. Was it Expo or E3? And it showed you two characters showing off their moves and parading around the actual stage. It was early, there was no collision detection, some of the details weren't there, like flowing ponytails, or Jeffrey didn't have his middle-aged spread here, and Kage's tassel was lacking. Sarah's ponytail didn't move, and you know, things like that. It's really interesting. It just goes to show how much time they spent on it and how long it took to actually get it running as it should. Apologies for that. I'm doing this on a cell phone. Yes, I'm using old technology here. I don't have a video capture card, but there you go. But anyway, minor little glitches aside, look. This is one hell of a game. Okay, now, this is the bit I have to mention this because so many years have passed that you can, and it doesn't, hopefully, it won't instigate any rivalries between PlayStation owners and Saturn owners that own only one of the machines. Now, I've owned both machines for many years now, and I've played both Tekken and Virtua Fighter extensively, to the point where I've had enough of it. So, the big question that arose then, back in the 90s, when they were first released, and it still arises now. I still hear, you know, talk about it, believe it or not. Which is better, Virtua Fighter or Tekken? And unfortunately, we do have fanboys among us, whether it's Sony or Sega. But my point of view will be sort of as unbiased as possible, and it's not just a personal opinion of the game I like best. We have to look at it in terms of depth, longevity. Graphics are not really important, but they are to a certain degree. So, you know, looks do count. People say looks don't count, but they actually do. I know that back in the day, when you purchased the magazines, they said, oh yes, the graphics are absolutely rubbish, they're awful, they're terrible, but the gameplay survived 100% intact. You know, that, for me personally, that was never enough. It had to look decent. If it looked absolutely dreadful but played okay, it wasn't enough for me. And a very good example of that is House of the Dead on the Saturn. Now that looked awful, but it played pretty well, but it didn't look that hot.
Fight.
But anyway,
1. Ready, go!
right, so which version is better? Okay, now first of all, I remember back in the day when I first went into Computer Exchange, or the CEX franchise, I only had a Saturn. And I bought the Japanese version of Virtua Fighter 2, which is what I'm reviewing here. And in the background, you had, you know, your PlayStation only owners, and you had Tekken 2. And of course, my dear friend and I, we were looking on in amazement at what Tekken 2 had to offer. And we thought, have we bought the wrong machine here? I thought that when the original Virtua Fighter was released and that the original Tekken came out, because it was beautiful. I mean, it was texture mapped. It looked absolutely staggering, didn't it? It was just wonderful. And it was the same with Tekken 2. First of all, you got Virtua Fighter with its 10 characters to start with, 11 if you count Dural.
Fight. 1. Ready, go!
And you had Tekken 2 with its 25 characters once you'd unlocked all of the sub-bosses. I mean, 25 fighters, each of them as diverse as possible. Some of them shared a few of the moves with their original, you know, main characters, but still, 25 fighters, everyone, each completely different. And 25 CGI endings. A fantastic CGI intro, which pretty much told the story and showed all of the fighters and, you know, why they were fighting. It was very, very impressive stuff. And in terms of that kind of thing, you've got to give it to Tekken, at least for that side of things. Oh, and there was light sourcing. The light sourcing was incredible. I loved it, and so did my friend. He thought, oh, I should have bought a PlayStation. We did think that, believe it or not. Yes, we did. But which game is better, Tekken 2 or Virtua Fighter 2? And I'm going to tell you, Virtua Fighter 2 is the one that wins here, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it looks beautiful. So does Tekken, but this one does look beautiful. The fact that it employs real, genuine fighting styles makes each character completely different. So when you really master one, it takes you years to master a character, and some of them are far more complex than others, especially in subsequent Virtua Fighter games. Like 3 and 4, it really had you, you know, pulling your hair out trying to master one. And now, the fact is that the depth here is unrivaled. I know in Tekken you had your predetermined combos, you had your 10 strings, and if you could pull them off, brilliant. It was more luck than skill, really. But with Virtua Fighter 2, if you pulled off a 3 or 4 hit combo, you were pretty good. If you pulled off a 4 or 5 hit combo, you were very good. If you went into the 6 and the 7 territory, and even 8 hit combos, which you can with some characters, you were a master. Now, if you watch, you know, experts at Virtua Fighter 2 fighting against each other, it's quite a sight to behold. In particular with characters like Akira, who's like the main cover character, let's say. He's the one that features, you know, more prominently on posters and, you know, propaganda and on the actual box. It's actually Akira himself. And if you see somebody using Akira, he's unstoppable. He's not particularly fast, but he employs those throws and grapples and counters that makes him a very dangerous foe. So I think in terms of depth, you have to give it to Virtua Fighter 2. It's also very easy to pick up and play. If you think about it, it's got 3 buttons: guard, punch and kick, which means that anybody can pick the game up and start performing impressive moves. But button mashers can stay away because you won't get very far. Whereas with Tekken, you can pretty much button mash with a few of the characters, and you know you can win against, you know, people that have been playing it for a very long time. So yes, the winning vote definitely goes to Virtua Fighter 2 in terms of depth. And Sony fanboys, I apologise. I know you're going to hate me for this, but I think after having owned the games for so many years and played them so extensively, this is the one that wins, for definite. Anyway. Other than that, now Virtua Fighter, when it comes to rewards, after you've completed the game, you get absolutely nothing, really. You just get the credits that roll, showing you, you know, beating your character, the last few moves that you perform at the end of the round, and that's it. If you complete the game on hard with Kage, you unlock a kind of a CG ending. It's not that good. I think it's Dural shedding her armor in favor of revealing her human skin, and apparently she's Kage's mother, I think, something along those lines. But that's pretty much it. The only thing you've got left with Virtua Fighter 2 is the sheer amount of fun you'll have playing it, mastering a character or all characters, and the fact that you keep discovering more and more things the more you play it. I mean, even to this very day, after all these years, I still discover the odd move or technique that I didn't know existed, or that I couldn't manage to pull off, or just didn't know I could do it. And there you have it. That's the review. That's Virtua Fighter 2. I'm going back into bloody rhyming again. Anyway, look, I hope you've enjoyed it. And the next review is going to be for the Saturn again. I'll be reviewing Sega Rally, and we'll be having a chat about that one and what makes that one such a brilliant game. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I hope I haven't waffled on too much. And until the next time, you know where you stand with retro. Ciao for now.